This week on Quadriga, Crunch Year 2016, can the EU survive? The new year has hardly begun, and already the EU is facing new crises. More and more member states are abandoning Schengen and reimposing border controls. Poland's new nationalist government is rapidly curtailing democratic freedoms. Indeed, nationalist and Eurosceptic parties are gaining ground in many EU countries. Is 2016 set to be a crunch year for the EU? What common glue holds the Union together? Coming to you from Berlin, Quadriga, the international debate. Your host this week, Peter Craven.
Yes, hello and a very warm welcome indeed to this latest edition of Quadriga, coming to you from the heart of the German capital. The new year, of course, has hardly begun, and the EU, it seems, is already facing another crisis or crises. We've heard it all before, of course, that the European Union has been threatened with breakup, perhaps. But now commentators seem to agree that breaking point is very near indeed. And the question we are asking, and many in the world are asking, especially here in Europe, of course, is can the EU survive? And to discuss that question, I'm joined here in the studio by three seasoned analysts and commentators. Let me introduce them to you without any further ado. Beginning with Wojciech Szymanski, who is the German correspondent for the Polish public broadcaster Polski Radio. He says the European Union faces huge challenges in 2016, and the new Conservative government in Warsaw is certainly not going to make it any easier for the EU. Now, a familiar face here on Quadriga is Alan Posner, who's a regular commentator for the Berlin daily Die Welt. As usual, he's brought along with him some strong points of view. Europe, Alan believes, should not try to defend Poland's democracy against the Poles, to open Sweden's borders against the Swedes, and to reform Greece against the will of the Greeks. If the EU continues down this road, he says, Britain will leave and others will follow. Judy is nodding. Judy Dempsey is a senior associate at Carnegie Europe and editor-in-chief of Strategic Europe. And according to Judy, the recent changes in Poland are a very bad signal both for the EU and for Europe's eastern neighbours. So, Wojciech Szymanski, let's begin in Poland, where the latest crisis is still brewing. What we're seeing is a challenge to the European Union, to the European Union's values. That's at least how many people see it. They say it's a coup d'etat. They say it's a threat to 25 years of democracy in Poland. What, Wojciech, is going on?
Well, the new Law and Justice Party that won the election is taking control over the country. And the pace and the way the government is taking control over the country is pretty controversial. And many say it's even unconstitutional. And it's, as many claim, dangerous for the values of the European Union. There is as well some correction in the foreign policy direction. The Polish Prime Minister and Foreign Minister said that they do not want to make a revolution in foreign policy, but they want to make some corrections. And I guess that we see those corrections already. In this week, Mr. Kaczyński, the leader of the Law and Justice Party, met with Viktor Orban. And I guess this shows in which direction those changes are going. I believe it's not Western Europe, it's not Berlin anymore being so important for Warsaw. These are rather those cities like Budapest, Prague or Bratislava that the new government is now facing.
OK, one aspect, Wojciech, of what you're talking about is a clampdown on the media, on public broadcasters in Poland. You are a reporter for Polish Public Radio. How great are your own personal fears and how great are the fears of your colleagues concerning this clampdown?
Well, the fears are big among my colleagues as well, because the project of the new media law that is not yet ready, but it's being presented, says that the Polish radio or the Polish television, they will not longer exist in this low form. They will be transformed into another forms, which means that everybody will lose jobs and they will be employed once again. And many people fear that many of those colleagues won't get employed again. So there is a big fear that people will lose jobs. And another thing is this new media law puts some direct influence of the government on the media. Well, Polish media has always been somehow influenced by the government. This is how it was constructed. The National Radio and Television Council was nominated by the parliament and president and so on, so there was always some kind of influence. But this new project says that, well, the minister of one of the ministers may simply nominate new directors of programs. This is somehow worrying.
OK, big questions, worrying questions. Give me a yes or no answer to this at the beginning of the show. Is Polish democracy under threat?
Not an easy question to answer.
Yes or no?
You'll find plenty of people in Poland, also on the streets every Saturday, saying, yes, Polish democracy is under threat.
OK,
but there are also many...
No. We'll leave it there for the... OK, we've had the point... Thank you very much for that summary of what's going on in Poland at this point in time. Judy Dempsey, you recently wrote an article that says Poland matters. Yeah? Or, in fact, I think it was called Why Poland Matters.
Yes.
Against the context of the discussion we're going to be having today about Europe and European values, why does Poland matter?
Poland matters. It's a very, very big member of the European Union. It's been playing a very important role inside Europe in terms of trying to persuade its European allies to have a proper security and defence policy. It is, above all, it's reached out, and vice versa. The Polish-German relationship has blossomed over the past 6 or 7 years. And it's been so good now that not just the personal contacts, the number of students studying here, the huge labour force, Polish, working in Germany, but actually the trade, bilateral trade between Poland and Germany now actually is higher than bilateral trade between Russia and Germany.
But this man, Alan Posner, the quote I had from him at the beginning of the show that I read out, you suggest that Germany is bullying a number of European countries, perhaps, you know, certainly Poland. That was the insinuation, yeah?
Yeah, well, I agree totally with what Julie said, that Poland matters incredibly. It's our most important member of the Union facing Russia. And I think it's really terrible that we have just agreed, against the wishes of the Poles, for a second gas pipeline to be built, Nord Stream 2, bypassing Poland again and connecting Germany directly to Russia. Obviously, the Poles feel that their national identity is being threatened by their two big neighbours who in the past have been not very nice to them, to put it mildly, Germany and Russia. And this fuels nationalism in Poland, and this simply shouldn't have happened.
I completely agree, and it's rare that I agree with Alan on this. The building of the second pipeline that goes under the Baltic Sea, it's designed that Russia will be able to directly transmit its gas direct to Germany. It creates a mockery of the EU policy of energy diversification. It creates actually a mockery of EU legislation, and it creates a mockery of actually the whole Polish-German relationship of transparency. This pipeline is in the interest of the German companies and of Russia, not in the interest of Poland or Ukraine.
Well, many Poles say that now when Germany calls for solidarity, for example, Poland should help Germany with this immigrant crisis. And Poles say, well, many people say, well, come on, this is what you call European energetic solidarity, building another pipe of Nord Stream. The first pipe was already a punch in the face of European energetic solidarity. So now it's also an argument for those people who say, well, this is not what European solidarity looks like.
I think there's a bit of too much German bashing in this sense. You must remember that when Angela Merkel became Chancellor in 2005, one of the first countries she visited and one of the first things she did was to repair the damaged relations between Berlin and Warsaw. And she defended Poland inside the EU when Putin and the Kremlin imposed a meat ban on Polish imports. I mean, Germany has extended huge amounts of solidarity to Poland.
Well, yes, this Nord Stream thing did damage to this relation, but I totally agree that those relations were blooming, or are hopefully blooming, not only on political level, but also economical and social level.
Okay, let's just take a break for just a second. We're talking about developments in Poland, essentially since last October's election. Let's have a look, before we talk further about those developments and how Europe, the EU, can react to them, or should react to them, perhaps. Let's just have a look at what's been going on in the last couple of weeks.
In Poland right now, it's not just the weather that's cold. The political climate is frosty as well. Just before Christmas, when people were out buying gifts, the governing Conservative Party took steps to weaken Poland's highest legislative court. People took to the streets in protest. It'll now be more difficult to impose constitutional restrictions on the government. And right before New Year's, the government got Parliament to approve amendments to Poland's media law. This would give the government more control over public broadcasting. Many Poles see these moves as a frontal assault on the rule of law and a danger to Polish democracy.
OK, a couple of hints there at some of the fears that people in Poland perhaps share, many people in Poland perhaps share. I want to talk now about a story that we've all been talking about a lot here in Germany this past week, what happened at Cologne railway station on New Year's Eve. I think many of our international viewers will have heard. Dozens of women say they were victims of abuse, of a mugging, of sexual assault indeed. And under suspicion came a large number of men who, Judy is nodding, men who were assumed to be of North African or Arab appearance. We have to be terribly, terribly cautious and careful here. Judy is nodding again because there's so much prejudice, there's so much projection in this story. But bad things went down, apparently, and this is important for our discussion because, Wojciech, you were telling me before the show that the Polish government is wallowing in this, is pointing its finger at what happened in Cologne and saying that's what you get in liberal, promiscuous Europe, and we don't want it in Poland.
Well, we had this big discussion about refugees before the elections. Shall Poland take refugees or not? And I guess, like in the other countries in Europe, like in Germany, there were these people saying we should not do it because it may be dangerous, because things like in Cologne may happen in Poland. And people who thought this way can say today, yeah, you see, that's exactly what we said.
And we don't have many hard facts, it has to be said. We should point that out for our viewers. Sorry to interrupt.
This story is very complicated. However, I guess not only in Poland, the people who opposite massive immigration or massive help for refugees feels they were right.
Judy, what do you think about all this?
Two things. The very slow reaction by the German media to report on this. Of course, the facts weren't clear, but there was only one newspaper that reported it immediately, and that was the local the local newspaper in Cologne. And I fear there was a bit of political correctness here, that somehow, if one criticises the refugee policy, you're in the racist camp. And if you actually praise it, well, then you have to nothing can go wrong. And it's unbelievably complicated, but we have to be very open in explaining that there are situations that we now will have to deal with. A million people, and from a very different culture, are going to try to settle in Europe, and is going to need a huge political will and social will and huge support from the society, and vice versa. It has to be reciprocal to try to integrate them. This is going to be very, very difficult.
Is the refugee crisis going to lead to Europe's downfall, as many say it will?
No. The point is that you know, there are different. I mean, the funny thing is that in Poland, the people who say, "Look what you get from letting refugees into the country," have a very similar view of women as many of the Arab and North African refugees coming to us. They are the Catholic Church and so on. They're very conservative. There's been no reports that no one has done what they did in Ireland, for instance, shown how much abuse there's been by the Catholic Church. There's been no, criticism of what happens to women in the home and so on. So I think there's a lot of double standards here. But to get back to your original question, will it destroy Europe? No, it won't destroy Europe. But it shows that there is simply a divide between what some countries feel about immigrants and what others feel about them. In Germany, we've had 50 years' time to accustom ourselves to the fact that we are a country of immigration. And up till about 5 years ago, the ruling CDU didn't even accept this. So why should we demand from Poland that they go take the road which took us 50 years in, shall we say, 5 or 10 since joining the EU. We can't.
If I may just some points. Well, it's true that the Polish society is in many parts very conservative, but comparing this attitude towards women with conservative Muslim and conservative Poles, I think it's too much. And other thing, German media has been criticizing Polish situation or Polish media very hard lately because of these changes in the media law. And now many Polish people can say, well, and it's already happening, oh, come on, Germans are teaching us on media standards, those Germans who needed 4 days to report on what's happening in Cologne. So this is also what's happening in Poland. And a third point, it's true that Poland has very little experience with immigrants in the 20th century and 21st century, very little experience with Muslim. People, when they hear about Muslim, they hear only that somebody made an ambush or killed somebody or did World Trade Center or Charlie Hebdo or something like that. And if suddenly Western countries want to relocate thousands of Muslim people to Poland, many people get scared. And you have to think about it.
Absolutely.
Let's get things into perspective. It's about sharing the burden of people who need refuge, who have faced torture, who have lost everything, who we have turned a blind eye to, who we didn't do anything to intervene, who we haven't even helped properly the countries at the forefront, Jordan particularly, and Lebanon. These people need help. And to brand them all as terrorists...
Is this what it's about? Judy says that's what it's all about.
Well, that's what it is about at bottom. I agree totally. The problem is if a country like Poland elects a government which says we don't want them, as the British have elected a government which says we don't want them, as the French, really, even this left-wing government doesn't want them, as nobody wants them, except, and even within Germany, their members of the ruling party say we want to...
No, Alan. No. They are using this rhetoric in order to keep away or to actually ape the populist movements and the National Front in France, for instance. This is the wrong policy.
I agree, it's the wrong...
What is lacking is the whole policy of communicating. Why are the refugees here? What is our aim? What is our strategy? How long will they stay? And above all, how do we end the conflict in Afghanistan and in Iraq and Syria? These are huge questions, but we can't leave these million people just stranded and then witness every single day people drowning.
Well, there's this big moral issue also concerning Poland, because Poland is a country which has exported millions of, maybe not refugees, but immigrants all around Europe and all around the world. There are huge Polish communities in the United States, in Chicago, in New York, in Germany, in London, in Great Britain. So it is somehow difficult for Poland to say we don't want anybody and simultaneously sending millions of people everywhere in the world.
OK, we're talking about the values that underpin the European Union. Let's have a closer look just for a minute at what those values are and discuss them then.
Article 2 of the European Constitution lists a number of core values upon which the EU is founded. These include respect for human rights, but as the refugee crisis continues, many EU states have ignored these values. Freedom of movement. Sweden and Denmark recently took action to restrict the number of refugees coming into their countries. Solidarity among member states. Many southern European countries feel that the EU is giving them a hard time. And Britain is set to hold a referendum on whether to stay in the EU. Respect for democracy. Nationalism is on the rise in many EU states. Right-wing populists are trying to undermine the cornerstones of democracy in general and the European project in particular.
Alan Posner, Hungary. We haven't talked about Hungary, but we did in passing Hungary's links with Poland or parallels there between the two countries. The Front National in France, Swedes, Danes closing their borders, having a row about their borders, the Brexit in the UK, the vote coming up this summer. Is there one common thread there? Is there one common factor?
Yes, and it isn't what your short film said, it isn't the fact that these people are against democracy, though many of them are. It's the fact that they feel that they've been dispossessed, disenfranchised, and they project that, partly rightly so, partly wrongly, on Europe. And they want to they have the feeling that they need to regain some of their powers that have been delegated to Brussels.
So these are national states clawing back some sovereignty,
yes,
some cultural, political sovereignty.
And it's not just national states. I mean, it's democracies, it's national parliaments. Let's face it, Europe has virtually no legitimacy to pass laws which overrule national parliaments, yet it happens all the time. And this has to change if we want to save Europe.
You said the EU has virtually no legitimacy to pass laws and so on and so forth, yeah? Does the EU have legitimacy?
The European Parliament just about has legitimacy, but its powers aren't very strong, and it's so dysfunctional in many ways. But the institutions, they have no legitimacy. And they are so remote, increasingly remote, from the citizens of Europe. This is the first thing. And secondly, one mustn't forget, there's huge swathes of young people who have no perspective.
Right.
Youth unemployment is so high among the EU countries that these people, they're on short-term contracts, they can't afford to save, they can't afford to settle down and have a family. They feel disorientated and they feel they don't have a stake either in their own countries, let alone how they're going to deal with globalisation.
Surely, Wojciech, young Poles have had a good deal from the EU. I don't know if I can subscribe to what Julia's just been saying. Yeah?
You can say it in German, jein, which means yes and no.
I love that German word, yeah.
The unemployment among young people in Poland is high. It's around 20%. Young peoples in Poland who, many of them voted for the conservative Law and Justice Party, which is some kind of paradoxum, are not offered anything to start a normal life. Those, what you said, short-term contracts, we call it in Poland, the garbage contracts. You get some money, not too much, but no social insurance, nothing for your later years. You may be fired every day. And this is what many young Poles see every day. And, you know, this advantage given by the European Union, many young Poles emigrated to Great Britain, to Germany, and they see. You wrote about it in your text that it's somehow funny that many young people see these well-organized democracies like Great Britain, Germany, and they still vote for Law and Justice Party. But they see one more thing living in Great Britain: that being a bus driver, working at a cashier in Tesco, you may lead a normal life in Great Britain or in Germany. In Poland, it's impossible. And this is what makes young people so disappointed. And this is what made them, I believe, also vote for the change in October.
Some important points being made there. We're all nodding. I'd like to go on to
just one tiny thing. I think, Wojciech, there's something else. The lack of expectation and the lack of perspective actually corresponds also to the growing disillusionment of the old established parties. And the political parties have somewhat atrophied, or they just take their power for granted. And they don't communicate their policies, and they don't give the citizen, the voter, a stake in the society. And you're getting this trend across Europe, actually, disenchantment with the political parties that were set up after the Second World War.
We've been hearing this for so long now. I mean, this is a line of argument we've been hearing for 2 decades now, and the problem has never really been solved. I suppose the big question that we have to ask at the end of the show is, does the EU, therefore, still have the political glue that can keep it together?
There's something remarkable about institutions. They are loath to give up power, and they are loath actually to change. They're kind of self-perpetuating, and a bureaucracy gets bigger. That's a kind of glue, but it's not a very creative glue.
Do you have a more optimistic take on that question, Wojciech?
I'm afraid that...
that's as optimistic as we can get.
I'm afraid that we may find this glue in Europe which will keep together only those core countries of Europe, which would be a fatal development, and I'm scared of that.
I understand. Alan, your take?
I think we need to take the British position more seriously, which is that the main glue of Europe will be the common market, trade. Europe has to create jobs, has to create economic growth. If it does that, people will sort of fudge the political issues. But if Europe doesn't do that, and look at the Eurozone, look at anemic growth everywhere except Germany. If you go on down that path, if you can't generate growth, jobs, perspectives, well, why are you so, I mean, what do you expect?
We're going to have to leave it there, yeah? Interesting stuff from Alan Post and my other two guests, Judy and Wojciech. Thanks very much indeed. The question we've been asking, will Europe survive? Maybe. Stay with us. Come back next week. Bye-bye. Jein, as the Germans say.